Okay, everyone. Hello. Thanks for inviting me, Willem, very much. As you all know, I'm going to keep this in English, because unfortunately I don't know Finnish yet. This is the first time, as far as I know, that a Sweden Democrat is visiting in a formal way the Finns party. And I'm very honored to be the first one. I'm a member of the Swedish Parliament for 4.5 years. I sit in the Swedish Justice Committee, so we deal with crime and punishment and also border control. And in addition to that, I'm my party's international secretary. So I've been in touch, well, I've been trying to be in touch with the Finns party for some time, but I haven't really had great success until now. So I'm very happy to be here. And I was asked to talk a little bit about immigration, the Swedish immigration policy that we have had for many years, far too many. And as you probably know, the case of Sweden is very extreme when it comes to the Nordic countries, when it comes to European countries, and in the world in general. We are the highest per capita immigrant country in Europe by far, even higher than Malta now, which says a lot, and probably the highest in the Western world. And that's a big problem for us, and I wanted to show you a little bit on why we oppose mass immigration to Sweden, why it's bad for us. This is the numbers of asylum applicants, not the approved ones, but the number of applications. Now the line here, this is Sweden, from 2006 until last year. So we had 81,000 asylum seekers last year. And that's not all immigrants, that's just asylum seekers. If you compare this to the Finnish statistics, it's 3,651 asylum seekers. It's a huge difference. The Finnish population is 5.5 million. The Swedish one is about 9.5. But we have more than 20 times the immigration just in asylum applicants. More than 20 times than you do. Now, if you look at approved residency, Sweden, the number of people we took in last year, excluding Norwegians and Finnish people and stuff like that, it's 110,000 immigrants about. 110,000 immigrants. While Finland took in just below 20,000. And a large part of those are students and returning Finns. So that's, you can see the difference here. This is Stockholm. And just to give you an idea how much this is, if you don't know it already, we have in the municipality of Stockholm, last year, 2014, we had almost 912,000 inhabitants in the municipality of Stockholm. Which means, if we take in 110,000 immigrants, then it's equivalent to one Stockholm every 8.3 years. Every 8.3 years, there's equivalent of Stockholm only in immigrants. You can imagine how high the immigration is then. And to compare with Gothenburg, it's a new Gothenburg every 5 years, only with immigrants. Mostly from Middle East and Africa. This is the situation that Sweden is in. And now we have a left government. Just a few months ago, we had what they call a right-wing government. There's no right-wing in Sweden. It doesn't exist. But that's what they call it. And when they took power in 2006, we had immigration levels about half of today. So when they got into power, they basically doubled immigration. The right-wing government in Sweden has been the most damaging government ever in Swedish history. Now, I am liberal when it comes to economic policies, lowering taxes and all that, but all of that doesn't matter when you have immigration levels that the moderate, the right-wing government enforced in Sweden. Nothing matters if you have this kind of high immigration, because the cost of immigration is going to offset any economic reform that you make. This is a graph of approved asylum. This is from the Eurostat statistics. And as you can see, this is per million inhabitants, something like that. And as you can see here, Sweden is even ahead of Malta. Finland is over here. According to Eurostat, you're already over the mean in the EU. So you're closing in on this, which is not good for you, in my opinion. We want to try to get over here somewhere. So that's the general situation when it comes to just a little bit of comparison between Finland and Sweden. And in the Swedish debate, we always say, you know, we want to do what Finland is doing. Nothing more. That's it. Because in Sweden, they call us racists and Nazis and you name it. And we say, you know, we want to do what the government in Finland is doing. That's it. Just what our neighboring country is doing, or Denmark, for instance. So my party is referring to Finland as a good example. And you are compared to Sweden. Since 1980 until last year, the number of total residency that the Swedish state gave to foreigners who immigrated to our country, it's almost 2 million since 1980. Almost 2 million. Now the population of 2014, it's about, at the end of 2014, it was 9.7 million, which means, if you just count residencies per population, it's almost 20%. Since I was born. That's a huge demographic shift. We have more immigration to Sweden now than the United States of America had in the 19th century, when all the Swedes and Finns, for that matter, emigrated to America. We have higher immigration per capita now in Sweden than America did then. Okay. So the question is, there's no doubt that we have a high immigration, the highest in the world. There's no doubt about that. I mean, in the Swedish debate, you will hear, and if you excuse my language, idiots saying, no, it's not that high. Some, but that argument it's actually not that strong anymore, because not everyone can see it in their daily lives. So the question everyone asks us is, why do we oppose mass immigration to Sweden and multiculturalism? There are 4 basic arguments against this. It's the argument of economy. It costs us a lot of money. You can go here. It's question of crime, increased criminality and decreased safety, which is one of the key issues. We have the third one here, culture, and this is rarely mentioned, very, very rarely mentioned. Worsened societal climate and decreased solidarity. And for a welfare state that Sweden is, and we want it to stay that way, you need a high, what they call cultural capital, social trust within the population for it to work. Otherwise, it doesn't. And the last... It's not Jantelagen. No. There's been a lot of research from Robert Putnam, for instance, and also in Sweden, that shows when you have multicultural society, trust between people, also within your own group, decreases. And then there's a fourth argument. It's a humane argument. People say that we should bring in all the immigrants to Sweden because it's a humane thing to do. And that's not correct either. That's actually the opposite. Because it's much cheaper to help them in their own so-called neighborhood, close to their countries or in their countries. And I will show some statistics upcoming. So let's start with economy. Now, there's three bases for our arguments. There's research done on the subject. How much does immigration cost? There's a lot of research done on it. And every single research paper done shows it's a huge cost, more or less. Then we have practical experience, because when we discuss research with our political opponents in Sweden, they just deny it, and they still claim it's good for our economy. They never ever present their proof, ever. But they still claim it's good for us. So then we ask them, okay, if it's so good, how come the municipalities in Sweden, the local politicians, don't want it? And then we even have recognitions, admittals from the political elite in Sweden who admitted that this is costing a lot of money. Let's look at just a few of this documentation. There's a lot more, but I won't have time to go over it all. And this is from a Swedish setting. I'm sure it's the same in Finland, but on a lower scale. We have this professor, Jan Ekberg. He has done a lot of research on immigration in Sweden. He was even appointed government from the government on these issues. And he said in one report it costs 120 billion per year with immigration. 120 billion.
Euros or kronor?
This is kronor, Swedish. Everything is in Swedish. We have Lars Jansson, and this is net. This is net cost. So when you take into account what the immigrants have contributed in taxes, because obviously some do, then it's a net loss of 120 billion. And before I go any further, there's a big difference, obviously, between different immigrant groups. I mean, if Finnish people immigrate to Sweden, no one has a problem with that, for many reasons. You're not a burden to society. You basically have the same culture as Swedish people, and so on and so forth. But this number, this negative number, is when you take in all of the immigrants combined, Finnish people and Somali people, and whoever it might be. So even though there are Western immigrants that is a plus for the system, in total it's a minus because of the huge burden from non-Western immigrants, mostly. We have Lars Jansson, who concluded 150 billions. We have the statistical authority in Norway here, who stated not long ago that a non-Western immigrant cost 4.1 million Norwegian when coming to Norway. We have Jan Tullberg, another professor in Sweden. He a few years ago, 250 billion in cost for immigration. And I think it's even higher than that. There's also many more. We have OECD report from 2013, who concluded it's also a minus. And the interesting thing is, when this report came out, what did the Swedish media do? There were big headlines in the Swedish media saying, yes, immigration is beneficial for us, it's good for us. But the problem with the Swedish media is that they can't read a graph, or a table for that matter. Because there was a graph, I should have put in the graph, you should have seen it. Like in one column, it was a plus, and then they stopped reading. They stopped reading. But in the column just over here, then it was a minus. And why is it plus here and minus here? Because this column to the right took into account the whole economy, while this first column only had a few sectors in it. So the media stopped reading here, while they should have read here. This is the final result. But they were so happy, finally they thought they found something, good, that said something good about immigration. So they stopped reading here. They make big headlines about it. Oh, how fantastic immigration is. And then when we prove them wrong, nothing. And some of them still refer to this report as something positive for immigration, even though it shows the exact opposite. And there's a lot of different reports. And I used all of these reports in a debate against our former migration minister. And I printed them out, and I had them in Parliament, and I held them up. Haven't you read these? One after another. And then I knew he was just going to deny it and say how good immigration is. So I asked them, okay, so you're denying all these reports, every scientific fact, every research ever done, so you're denying that. I knew you would. So then I asked him, okay, what about this? Practical experience. You have to excuse me, this is in Swedish, I didn't have time to translate it. But basically, in 2004, Ilmar Reepalu, he was the sort of mayor of Malmö for a long time, social democrat. And he said already in 2004 that Malmö has the highest dependency on social welfare in the country. And he wanted to pass on this burden to the smaller municipalities in Sweden. That's what he said. Now the question you have to ask yourself is, why does Ilmar Reepalu, the mayor of Malmö, former mayor of Malmö, in the most multicultural city in Sweden, Malmö, now if immigration is so good, shouldn't Malmö be like paradise on earth, right? Their economy should be blossoming, and it should be like a really nice place. But instead, he goes out and said, we can't take the burden. And he wanted to pass on the immigrants to other local municipalities. Why? Because immigration is not working. We had, in 2008, in Södertälje, just south of Stockholm, we have taken in a lot of Iraqis, mainly Christian Iraqis, but that doesn't matter. Because the former mayor, so to speak, Anders Lago of Södertälje, you know what he did? He went to the US and complained about it. He said that the limit was reached a long time ago. The limit of the number of immigrants Södertälje, the city, can take in was reached a long time ago. And it has to be and I quote, stop, stop, stop for Sweden. Now, if immigration is so fantastic, why did he travel all the way to US to beg them to take them instead? There's another one. This is one from the moderate party, the so-called right-wing party. He was also the mayor, sort of. And he said that they are losing 35 million a year only on refugees. And the cost is increasing all the time. He went out complaining. So I asked migration minister, okay, forget about the research. Why are they saying it if it's so fantastic for us? Because they are the ones who are facing the reality before, you know, the elite in Stockholm who lives in their Swedish neighborhoods ever see it. We have another social democratic mayor in Katrineholm. He says that this municipality is at risk to being crushed. And that's the words he used, trycka sönder, crushed next year because of family reunification from Somalia. And he said that they are forced to transfer economic funds from child and elderly care to immigration to fund this. Now, why did he say that if immigration is so fantastic for the economy? Obviously, because it's not. And I can go on like this in municipality after municipality. Here, it says, I mean, the state, from the national parliament, they even enforced a law that forced municipalities to take in what they call ensamkommande flykting, but that means lonely refugee children. Lonely refugee children. So now they're forcing the municipalities to take in these lonely refugee children. They're not lonely, they're not refugees, and they're not children, but that's another discussion. So why do they need to enforce this law if this immigration is so fantastic for us? They have never been able to answer these questions. I won't take this. It's basically the same. It's municipality after municipality to take them in. Now, when it comes to recognitions, even in our state budget 2 years ago, the government at that time, the right-wing government, this was the former Prime Minister Reinfeldt, as Jussi also referred to. He said, it's not correct to describe Sweden in a state of mass unemployment. If you look at ethnical Swedes in the middle of their lives, we have very low unemployment. Basically saying, the problem we have is with immigration. Now, of course, the Swedish media, when they heard this, it was a big uproar. Oh, what did he say? Well, for once, the truth. And this is from the state budget. Foreign-born has heavily increased their share of the population, and compared to those born in Sweden, have a lower employment rate. Thank you, which in itself is problematic. So even in the official state budget, they admitted that the problem is immigration. This is what Reinfeldt, again, he's the worst of them. He is the one who let in the most in history. In TV, in the state television, in a debate, he said this to his social democratic counterpart. He said this: if we're going to allow people who live under poorer conditions and have family in Sweden to get here, then I think we should be aware of that it's going to take increased public funds. Then other things will need to be cut back. For instance, less to school and less to healthcare. So we have all of these. We have the research. We have the actual practical happenings in the municipalities. And we have even the Prime Minister admitting it. And then when we say it, we're the racists. And as I've been saying, now if immigration is so beneficial for us, then Malmö, the most multicultural city in Sweden, Södertälje, Rinkeby, Husby, all of these areas are have taken in a lot of immigrants for a long time. All of these cities, according to their logic, should be rich, peaceful, and interesting. And they're all the opposite, the exact opposite. And they all talk about other municipalities should take responsibility. Why are they doing this if immigration is so fantastic? They should all want them. They should all advocate free immigration even, because it's so fantastic. But none of them is doing it, except for the Green Party, but they are. Husby is here. Yeah, it's close to Stockholm. Husby is close to Stockholm. Okay, so that's a little bit about the economical aspect. And there's a lot more to say about it, but I won't bore you with it. Then we come to the issue of crime. We also base this on research statistics and what we call the common sense. What the others, they don't even know how to spell this. Okay, so we have two main reports from a Swedish BRÅ. This is called the Crime Prevention Council. It's a state authority. And back in 1996, they came out with a report on immigrants and immigrants' children's crime rate. They stopped doing these reports 10 years ago, and you'll see why. And this stated every fourth immigrant from these countries, Morocco, blah, blah, Northern Africa, has been registered for a crime. Every fourth, that's quite a lot. And they say high values in general among immigrants from Arab countries, also Northern Africa, West Asia, which is Arab countries, Turkey and Iran. So they said this, black on white, that we have higher crime rates among immigrants, and also it's from the Middle East and Africa. That's what it's about. 10 years later, they did a follow-up research study, and it said exactly the same thing. 4 times more common that foreign-born are suspect of deadly violence and robbery compared to Swedish-born with 2 Swedish parents, especially from Africa and West Asia, meaning Arab countries, including Turkey and so on. So these 2 reports, we often quote them. And even when you take into account social economic factors, like education, how much money you earn, this overrepresentation from these countries persists. So it has nothing to do with, oh, I'm poor, so therefore I need to rape someone, which is totally logical, by the way. It has to do with culture and the way you see violence, the way you perceive women and their rights, and so on and so forth. That's why, for instance, rape is much higher among these groups, because they have a different perception on women than we do in the West. There's a lot more research. We have the correctional facility in Sweden. They have a long-term report. So they investigated over a 10-year period those who were convicted of the worst crimes. And the worst crimes was defined as 4 years or more in prison for a man and 2 years for a woman. Now there's, at the end of this report, you can count that it's 52.5% were either foreigners, and a foreigner is someone who does not have Swedish citizenship, or immigrants, those who have immigrated and gotten a citizenship. 52.5% of those who committed the worst sort of crimes were immigrants. Another report, also from Crime Prevention Authority, from 2000, youth that robs youths in Malmö and Stockholm, young people robbing young people. 90% of those who committed the robberies were immigrants or kids of immigrants, and 90% of the victims were Swedish. So not only are they committing the crimes, they're actually directing it to Swedish people. It's a form of racism against Swedish people. There was a thesis from the university a few years back, I think it was 2006, where she did qualitative study of crime with immigrants, and she concluded basically that they're committing crimes against Swedish people because they want to humiliate us. One quote was, "I want them to kiss my feet." So they robbed people not because they needed a cell phone, because they wanted to humiliate Swedish people. We have a police quarterly report from 2012, for instance, page 11. And they said the offenders are in many cases young people with foreign, non-Nordic descent and an acting group against young victims. And then there's some newspaper stories from Finland, Denmark, and Norway. This is from 2012 and 2009, and I'm sure there are yesterday if you want to find it. In Denmark, every second rapist is a foreigner, in the newspaper BT. In Finland, every third rape committed by foreigner, in Hufvudstadsbladet. In Denmark, crime twice as high among immigrant youth below 20 years of age compared to Danish young people. And Norway, and this has been like this for a few years. Every assault rapes in Oslo in 2009, I think it was 2010 also, was done by non-Western immigrants, and the police said this to the newspaper VG. And there's a ton of this, not only in the Nordic countries, you can see this also around Europe. So that's economy, that's crime, that's two of the reasons. Then the third that people don't talk about as much is culture. So what do we mean by that, culture? What cultural problems am I referring to? Well, this is the factor in general. If you sum it up, this is what it's about. What we're seeing in Sweden, and what we're seeing in all the multicultural societies all across the world, I think throughout history, well, as far as I have seen at least, people start feeling less at home in their own country, in their own city, in their own neighborhood even. When immigrants come in, they think, this is not what I want, this is not my home anymore, now I'm leaving. And this is exactly what's happening in Sweden. This is a news article from 2005 in the largest newspaper in the south of Sweden. And the headline says, people of Malmö is moving away from the immigrants. Now what happened was that there were families, often with young kids, but not only, that moved out from Malmö. And they were usually, well-educated, they had jobs, or there were older people who had good income or at least good financial stability.